I never planned to go into the attic that day. I was just cleaning, trying to distract myself from the strange nights I'd been having. Lately, restless sleep, cold spots in the house, the feeling of being watched. It all built up until I finally gave in to the urge to organize, thinking maybe clearing out old things would somehow clear the air, too. I hadn't opened the attic hatch in years. The ladder creaked under my weight, dust filled my lungs, and the air up there was thick and stale, untouched for what felt like decades. Most of it was boxes and broken furniture, all shrouded in cobwebs. But then, tucked behind an old trunk, I found a small leather case. It was almost perfectly preserved, to clean compared to the rest of the attic. I picked it up, already feeling a strange buzz in my fingertips, and opened it to find an old camera. Not a modern digital one, but not quite vintage either, somewhere in between. It had a digital screen and memory card, but the body was worn and heavy. Still, it turned on immediately, without charging, which shouldn't have been possible. That was the first red flag, but I was too intrigued to stop there, curious. I opened the gallery, expecting pictures of past owners or old family events. Instead, I found dozens of photos, every one taken in my house, my living room, my hallway, and worst of all, my bedroom. I felt the blood drain from my face as I scrolled through. The timestamps were recent, very recent. They weren't archived memories from years ago, they were from this week, and I hadn't taken a single one. Each photo was eerily framed, as if by someone who knew my space intimately. My bed was in the exact center of the frame. My side table, where I always keep a glass of water, appeared perfectly untouched. In one photo, I could see myself lying asleep, the blanket slightly shifted, my face turned to the side. It was so close, as if the person taking it was only a few feet away. The idea that someone had been in my room while I slept, taking pictures, studying me, sent a deep shiver through my entire body. I didn't want to believe it. I kept telling myself it had to be some trick. Maybe someone hacked my camera system, or maybe this was some cruel joke. But then I remembered that I didn't own a camera like this. No one I knew did. I never brought one into the house. So how had it ended up in my attic? More importantly, how had it captured such recent images? I tried to convince myself there had to be a logical explanation, but there wasn't one. Every photo matched my exact decor, the position of my furniture, even the book I left open on the nightstand. They were undeniably real, undeniably mine. Scrolled further, heart racing. Some of the photos were darker, grainier, like they were taken without a flash, but I could still make out familiar outlines. My closet door, my hallway mirror, even the subtle curve of my own arm beneath the blankets. The closer I looked, the more details I noticed, things that made my stomach churn. In one image, the door to my room was slightly ajar, casting a thin sliver of light onto the floor. In another, my laptop screen glowed faintly, even though I always shut it down at night. These weren't just pictures, they were evidence of something or someone watching me. I zoomed in on one photo, trying to make sense of a shadow in the corner. It was just outside the frame of light, half hidden, but unmistakably humanoid. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't a trick of the light, it was a figure. I stared at it for a long time, heart pounding, my mind screaming for logic to explain it, but nothing came. Just silence and the echo of dread building in my chest. I put the camera down, hands shaking. I didn't know what to do. Call someone, but who would believe me? What could I even say? A ghost camera took pictures of me sleeping. It sounded ridiculous, yet the images were real. The fear was real, and the silence that followed only made it worse. I walked around my house, checking every window, every door. Everything was locked, just like always. But that didn't matter anymore. Whoever, or whatever, had taken those pictures didn't use doors. It didn't need to. It was already here. From that moment on, the camera never left my mind. I left it on the kitchen table, but I couldn't stop glancing at it, as if expecting it to move on its own. Every creak in the house felt louder. Every gust of wind felt like breathing. And that night, when I tried to sleep, I couldn't help but wonder if the camera had already taken photos of me while I was unaware. What else might it have captured that I hadn't seen yet? One of the images showed me lying in bed, clearly asleep, the camera angle positioned perfectly from the corner of the room where no furniture stood. The timestamp read 2:47 a.m., matching my usual sleep time. In the photo, I looked peaceful until you noticed the shape near the closet. At first glance, it might have passed as a shadow, but as I zoomed in, the truth became clear. It was tall, dark, and vaguely human, yet something was deeply wrong with it. Its posture wasn't natural. It slouched forward slightly, and its arms seemed too long. The figure didn't have any visible facial features. Its head was tilted, as if it was staring down at me, studying me with invisible eyes. My chest tightened. I didn't remember waking up that night. I didn't remember feeling anything out of place. How could something have been in my room, standing that close to me, without me sensing it? I kept staring at the image, searching for signs of manipulation. Was this photoshopped? Was it even real? But the image data on the camera hadn't been altered. The metadata was intact. The time matched the others. Nothing had been edited. It wasn't fake. That was what made it worse. The figure's edges were blurred, not the way motion blur appears, but like the surrounding air refused to fully capture its shape. Like the camera itself had trouble processing what it was seeing. I zoomed in as much as I could, but the closer I looked, the more distorted the figure became. Its arms seemed to pulse with faint streaks of light, like they were vibrating at a different frequency. Behind it, the closet door was cracked open, though I always made sure it was closed at night. It felt like the photo had frozen a moment of invasion, like something had slipped through and stood silently in my room while I remained unaware. I pulled away from the screen, my pulse pounding. Was it still here? I turned to look at the closet. It was closed, just like I left it before bed. But the photo told a different story. I got up, slowly, and walked over to the door. My hand hovered near the handle. I didn't want to open it. I didn't want to confirm anything. But I had to. I flung it open in one motion. Nothing, just clothes. Hangers, a few boxes. But I stepped back quickly, because the air inside was colder. Not a draft. It was like the inside of a freezer. I shut it again. The image stayed in my mind all day. I kept replaying it in my head. A dark figure, me, asleep. No memory of any of it. I considered deleting the photos, throwing away the camera, pretending I had never seen any of it. But some part of me needed to understand. I wanted to believe it was some long exposure trick, or a speck of dust on the lens, or even some elaborate prank. But none of that explained the chill in the room, or the sense of dread that had settled into my stomach like a stone that night. I set up my phone on video mode and aimed it at the same corner. I left the light on low and tried to sleep, but it didn't come easily. Every creak in the house sounded like a footstep. Every gust of wind outside sounded like a whisper. I stared at the closet for over an hour before my eyes finally closed. The next morning, I rushed to my phone. The video had recorded for 4 hours before the battery died. Most of it showed nothing. But around 2:46 a.m., the screen went static for 10 seconds. When it returned, the closet door was open. I froze. It wasn't open before. I had checked it. I had shut it. The footage didn't show the door moving. It just glitched and it was open. That was all. I checked the rest of the recording, but the door stayed open until morning. No one entered or left, but I couldn't explain what I was seeing. I checked the closet again. Still empty. Still cold. Later that day, I checked the camera again. The one I found in the attic, a new photo, had appeared. This time, I was still in bed, and the dark figure was gone. But on the wall behind me, written in faint white chalk-like strokes, was a word I didn't recognize. I zoomed in, tried to enhance the image. The word wasn't from any language I knew, but it looked ancient, like a symbol from something old. My room was blank, now no writing anywhere, but it had been there in the photo. That's when I realized the camera wasn't just showing what happened. It was showing what I couldn't see, what wasn't supposed to be seen, and somehow I had invited it in. The third image I found in the camera's gallery was perhaps the most disturbing of all. It showed me standing in front of the mirror in my bedroom. The image had a warm, yellowish tint, like the soft glow from my bedside lamp, casting gentle shadows. At first, it didn't look too strange. I had worn that hoodie a couple nights ago, and the background matched the familiar clutter of my room. But it was the reflection that made my stomach twist. In the photo, my reflection wasn't copying my stance at all. My real body was standing still, facing the mirror calmly, but the reflection had its head slightly tilted and was smiling. My face in the reflection was grinning in a way I've never smiled. It was wide, stretched unnaturally, and the eyes were completely black. They weren't shadowed. They weren't due to lighting or poor camera quality. The eyes were pitch black, like two empty sockets that swallowed light. And the smile there was nothing human about it. It looked forced, as if the muscles had been pulled back far beyond their limits. The rest of the room reflected normally. Everything behind me, the bed, the nightstand, the books looked exactly how they always did. Only the reflection was wrong. It wasn't a trick of the glass. It was something else. I stared at the photo for minutes, hoping my brain would find a logical explanation. Maybe it was a double exposure, or the mirror had caught a weird angle. But no matter how long I studied it, I couldn't convince myself it was anything but unnatural. Mirrors don't change expressions independent of the person standing in front of them. They don't show smiles when the real face is calm. They don't twist reality unless something else is influencing them. That photo made me remember something I had buried in the back of my mind. A few nights before finding the camera, I had a dream, more at least. I thought it was a dream where I was brushing my teeth and looked into the mirror, only to find my reflection wasn't moving with me. It just stood there, staring, and after a moment, it smiled. I had shaken myself awake, dismissing it as a vivid nightmare. But now I wasn't so sure. That photo looked exactly like the reflection from my dream. As if that wasn't disturbing enough, there was more in the reflection than just the twisted version of me. I noticed, barely visible in the top corner of the mirror, a cluster of faint symbols scratched into the surface. I hadn't seen them before in real life. but they were clearly visible in the imaged small, sharp lines forming unfamiliar patterns. They looked like runes or glyphs, something ancient. I ran to the mirror in my room, half hoping I'd find them and be able to dismiss it as some prank or damage I hadn't noticed. But my mirror was completely clean. No scratches, no symbols, nothing. I even tried shining a flashlight at different angles, pressing my fingers gently across the surface, breathing on it to fog it up anything that might reveal hidden marks. Still nothing, but in the photo, they were undeniably there, etched like scars onto the glass. That terrified me more than the reflection. It meant the camera could see something I couldn't, something that wasn't physically present but existed all the same. It wasn't just documenting the room, it was showing another layer of ether layer that overlapped with my reality in a way I didn't understand. After that, I found myself avoiding the mirror at night. I covered it with a towel before going to bed, unable to stand the thought of catching something I wasn't meant to see. But the paranoia didn't stop. I kept thinking about what might be watching me from the other side of the glass. Was the reflection still smiling, even when I wasn't looking? Was it copying me at all anymore? Or had it become its own entity, something that existed parallel to me, yet completely separate? I started noticing small changes around the mirror. 2. Things moved subtly. My toothbrush once fell off the sink without explanation. My watch, which I always placed in the same spot, once ended up on the floor, facing the mirror perfectly. Every time I thought I was imagining things, something new would happen. And every time I checked the camera, another photo would be waiting. More of me in front of the mirror, more versions of myself with black eyes and crooked grins. Sometimes with hands resting on my shoulders that weren't mine. Sometimes with a second pair of eyes faintly visible in the background. The reflection was no longer just a visual glitch. It was something else. A gateway, maybe. Or a mimic. Or something older than I could comprehend, using the mirror as a thin wall between its world and mine. Whatever it was, it knew I had seen it now, and it wasn't trying to hide anymore. After discovering the chilling photos in the camera and experiencing the increasingly strange events in my home, I finally made the decision to hide the device. I placed it in the bottom drawer of my desk, underneath stacks of notebooks and papers, hoping that putting it out of sight would also put it out of mind. That night, I tried to convince myself it was all in my head. Maybe I had imagined the new photos, maybe I was sleepwalking, maybe I just needed rest. But when I woke up the next morning and opened the drawer just to check, the camera was gone. I searched my room in confusion, pulling open drawers, flipping my blanket, even checking under the bed. It wasn't there. I tried to dismiss it, thinking I had moved it without realizing. But later that afternoon, while going to the kitchen to grab a glass of water, I saw it, sitting calmly on the top shelf in the hallway, the same shelf where I had never placed it. It looked untouched, waiting for me. My heart dropped. I didn't move it there. No one else lives in the house. There's no explanation. Curiosity once again pushed past fear, and I picked it up. The power turned on instantly, even though I had tried removing the batteries the day before. I didn't even question how anymore. I opened the gallery, and sure enough, there was a new photo. It had been taken during the night, once again showing my room, but this time from a lower angle, almost as if the camera had been placed on the floor beside my bed. The timestamp read 3:12 a.m. I was asleep in the frame, facing away from the camera. But the scariest part wasn't me. It was what appeared Just inches from my bed, a shadowy figure, crouched low, partially hidden behind the bedpost. The shape was dark and undefined, but its presence was undeniable. It was watching me. My breathing became shallow. I closed the image and tried to shut off the camera, but it wouldn't power down. The screen flickered for a moment, then displayed the gallery again. Now there were more new photos, 4 of them, each from different angles. One from the hallway, one from the foot of my bed, one from just inside my closet, and another from my living room where I'd been sitting the evening before. The realization hit hard. It wasn't just my bedroom. The camera was capturing images all over the house, and I wasn't the one taking them. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my chair with every light in the house on, the camera on the table in front of me. I watched it constantly, waiting to see if it would move, if it would take a picture in front of my eyes. But it just sat there, lifeless, innocent. At 3 a.m., the lights flickered for a brief second. Only once, but in that moment, my body felt an overwhelming wave of dread. I could feel something was near, not visible, not making a sound, but present. The air felt heavier, my skin crawled, and I couldn't shake the sensation that something was standing just behind me. I didn't turn around. The following morning, the camera had moved again. This time, it was placed back in the attic, on the same shelf where I had originally found it, as if it had reset itself. My heart sank as I climbed up there to retrieve it. I already knew what I would find, and I was right in another new photo. My hallway, viewed from the ceiling, as if the camera had been hovering above. I didn't want to look at it anymore, but something compelled me to. Now, every night, a new photo appears. It doesn't matter where I place the camera or if I touch it at all. Even when I lock it away, it somehow returns. The images continue, growing closer, more detailed. I can now see things in the photos that aren't in my house. In one, a door appears at the end of the hallway that doesn't exist. In another, there's an unfamiliar staircase descending into darkness. My house doesn't have a basement. These aren't just pictures. They're like glimpses into another version of my home, layered over mine like a shadow. The worst part is how the photos make me feel. It's not just fear, it's familiarity. As if the camera isn't showing me something new, but something that has always been there, hidden just outside my perception. Like my home has always had this other side, and the camera is the only thing that can see it. And now that it's begun to reveal it, I can't stop. I can't unsee what I've seen. And every night, I wonder what the next photo will show, and how close whatever's watching me is willing to get. The final image in the camera's gallery struck me with a kind of dread I hadn't yet experienced. Unlike the others, this photo was taken from inside my home, but looking outward, it was positioned from the angle of the front hallway, with the door slightly open, showing just a sliver of the outside. Through that narrow crack, I could see myself. I was standing at the front step, facing the camera, facing the person who took the picture. But I had no memory of going outside that night. No recollection of waking up, walking to the door, or opening it. Yet, there I was, wearing the same t-shirt I had fallen asleep in, barefoot, my hair slightly messy, just as it would have looked had I just gotten out of bed. What disturbed me most wasn't just that I didn't remember any of it. It was my expression. I wasn't surprised or confused or even looking at the camera. I was smiling, not widely, but enough to send chills down my spine. It was the kind of smile you give when greeting someone you already know, friendly, familiar, like I had invited whoever was holding the camera into my house. I kept replaying it in my mind. Could I have sleepwalked? Maybe, but I had never done that before. And the door was locked from the inside with a bolt that required turning a move too complicated for someone who was unconscious. Even stranger, the door showed no signs of being opened in the morning. The bolt was still in place, the security chain untouched. It made no sense. The camera captured something that my waking mind had no awareness of. I zoomed in on the image, trying to find any clue. Behind me, the porch looked oddly darker than it should have at that time of night. The streetlights always cast a pale glow, but in the photo, everything behind me was black. Not dark, completely black, like a void. It looked as if the world beyond the door simply didn't exist anymore. And in that darkness, just behind where I was standing, there was a shape. Almost impossible to notice at first. But once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. A tall, thin figure loomed behind me in the shadows. No details were visible, only the suggestion of limbs and a head, a towering silhouette that seemed to blend into the darkness. But even with no facial features, I felt watched. It wasn't just near MIT, was standing directly behind me, almost touching, yet I showed no awareness. No fear, just that slight, chilling smile. The camera wasn't showing reality in the normal sense anymore. It was capturing things that didn't align with the rules of the waking world. It felt as though it had become a portal, a witness to whatever thin barrier separated the natural from the unnatural, and that barrier had started to break down. I was no longer just seeing odd images. I was part of them, acting in them, moving, interacting, and welcoming things into my space without any memory of it. I started questioning everything. Could it be that I had been under some influence since finding the camera? Was it manipulating my mind, making me act out some role in these nightly events? Or had it simply been documenting what was always there, what I was too blind or too protected to see before? Whatever the truth was, the line between my conscious self and the version of me in those photos had begun to blur. After that photo, things in the house felt different. Not just off, but wrong. Lights would dim slightly when I entered a room. I began to hear faint sounds, shuffling footsteps, whispered voices, the sound of the front door creaking even when I knew it hadn't moved. My dreams became more vivid, almost like memories I hadn't made yet. Sometimes I'd wake up and find dirt on the hallway floor, like someone had tracked it in from outside. Other times, I'd notice the front door's handle turned ever so slightly, though the bolt was still in place. But the photo kept haunting me. Every time I closed my eyes, I'd see my own face looking back at me from the other side of the doorcom, relaxed and smiling at something I couldn't see. That wasn't me, not the me I recognized. It was a version molded by whatever was behind that lens. A version slowly being pulled into the world the camera had been revealing. Night after night, image after image. I stopped trying to hide the camera. There was no point. Every time I moved it, it would return to some other place in the house, waiting, watching. I stopped sleeping regularly, started keeping logs of everything I experienced, everything I remembered. But the entries became fragmented, like my memory was unraveling. And now, every night, just before I close my eyes, I wonder if tomorrow's photo will show me again standing somewhere else I don't remember going, smiling at something I shouldn't know, with that same thing standing just behind me, a little closer each time.